Medical Intuitive Insights with your host, Dr. Gloria Warren, is a program that presents topics on medical intuition, holistic opportunities outside of mainstream society, and scientific research as applied today. Topics range from online intuitive readings to interviews unveiling alternative healing modalities and discussing them with inspirational leaders. Dr. Warren is the bridge within holistic arts while stressing the balance between the spiritual and physical self. So now, please welcome the host of Medical Intuitive Insights, Dr. Gloria Warren.
What if your brain fog is not caused from a brain problem? What if your lack of focus is not about discipline? And what if your energy crashes? And what if it has nothing to do with your age? What if the real issue is actually your food? Today, we are uncovering the missing link between what you eat and how clearly you think. Because your brain is not failing you. Your brain fog is not a mystery. Your lack of focus is not random either. And your emotional ups and downs may not be psychological at all. But what if it's your food? Today, we are breaking down something incredibly powerful: the 7 steps towards mental clarity through clean food. Because clarity is not just mental, it's biochemical, it's neurological, and yes, it's energetic. Welcome to Medical Intuitive Insights. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Warren, and today we are talking about something that affects every single one of us: mental clarity, focus, memory, decision-making, emotional stability. These are not just brain functions. They are reflections of what you eat, what you absorb, and what your body is able to process. Here's the truth. Most people are never told your brain cannot outperform your biology. So let's move on to step 1. Remember, it's 7 steps. We'll give you all 7 steps in this show, so stay with us here. Step 1, stable blood sugar. That equals stable thinking. Yeah, you heard me right. You know, we need to think about blood sugar. When your blood sugar spikes, your brain spikes. You know, if it's really high, you can become hyper. Your brain could be running in circles and can make you emotional even. And when your brain crashes, gets real low, your brain crashes with it. It's not good. It can also make you emotional as well. Hypoglycemia, good point. Blood sugar crashes, gets very low. You can barely think about all the things and details and things like that. Matter of fact, I know if my blood sugar crashes, my brain isn't normal for at least 4 or 5 hours after. It does take that long. Most people think, oh, eat a little sugar and you'll be fine. No, the brain itself takes time. The cells are short on sugar, so they need time to absorb the sugar from your tissue, and that needs time to absorb sugar from your blood and digestive system. It's a process. So, and same with high blood sugar. It doesn't just, oh, just stop eating sugar for a half hour and your sugar will be fine. No, it's not like that. You're constantly absorbing carbohydrates even from your intestines to keep that sugar up. So, this is not theoretical. It's physiological. It has to do with your physiology. Every time you consume refined carbohydrates, it's everywhere, by the way, sugary snacks, ultra-processed foods, and this is the part a lot of people forget about. Ultra-processed foods, fake cheese, other things that, noodles, ultra-processed. They're not whole grain. They're not, anything ultra-processed, a candy bar even. You can create a glucose roller coaster. By eating a lot of things that are ultra-processed or carbohydrates, it makes your sugar go up and spikes. And then, guess what? how fast it went up, it can drop just as fast. It creates that blood sugar roller coaster. Oops, I need more sugar, or I need something to eat, and you're doing it again. So what happens when the roller coaster begins? Brain fog, irritability, poor concentration, anxiety-like symptoms, emotional problems. But when you stabilize your blood sugar with clean proteins, healthy fats, you did hear me right, fats, and whole foods, simple foods. In my last show, I mentioned if the ingredients has an extra long list, just walk away from it. Don't buy it. Don't put it in your home. Have a hard-boiled egg. Have something simple, 2, 3 ingredients in the product, not 15, 20, 50. You never know. So by eating clean proteins, healthy fats, and whole foods, you get a steady source of energy absorbed into your bloodstream. Consistent thinking, not the up and down thinking. Not that low blood sugar problem and not a high blood sugar problem in your brain. It actually regulates your emotions as well. So stable blood sugar equals stable neurotransmitter signaling. By the way, Nurse Peggy is going to join us today. She will be on shortly, and as soon as she does get on, I will key you in with her, okay? So, ta-da, there she is. Hi, Peggy. This is Nurse
Hi,
Peggy, and
welcome.
she actually has a show called The Holistic Nurse with Nurse Peggy. So very glad to have you on our show. You look fantastic today. So glad to see you. We were
Happy to
just
be here.
talking.
And I love this topic because,
Mhm.
nurses are the biggest offenders of, trying to balance our brain with sugar, and it doesn't work. I can tell you from personal experience.
Being on your feet all day, it just kind of triggers it, right? You're just hungry and you just grab something, and sometimes it's not what you normally would eat, but you need to keep going, right?
Well, when I'm educating a diabetic patient, I'm very quick to explain that unless it's an actual crisis, low hypoglycemic crisis, where you do need some instant glucose or, we used to tell back in the day
Mhm.
before we had those conveniences, people had orange juice with sugar, they had lifesavers. Lifesavers are not good. If you're that much on the border of a crisis, you could choke on the lifesaver, and that's a whole new problem.
Not a
Um,
lifesaver,
but
is it?
but some people actually are not diabetics by diagnosis. They're actually hypoglycemics. They always run relatively low.
Mhm.
And when I'm out in the field in my car all day, I often keep a cooler with peanut butter and crackers so I have the protein or, the cheese sticks that you can buy, things like that. But your hard boiled egg is really I feel guilty if I go to Wawa and buy a hard boiled egg when I know how easy they are to keep all the time, and you know,
Right.
um,
Well, I cheat. I have eggs. I have chickens outside, so when I make hard-boiled eggs, I boil up a dozen of them and I put them in the fridge. So easy peasy. And I'll peel them all at once and put them in the fridge, cover them up, and I'll just grab one. I like to pickle them. I love pickled hard-boiled eggs. Somebody told me last week, I can't stand hard-boiled eggs. Pickle them. They're fantastic. You can flavor them even with whatever you use in your pickle juice. So yeah, it definitely does it for me. Like this morning, I'm guilty of low blood sugar, so I had a piece of boiled chicken, yes, boiled, and I had onions in the broth, and I boiled them for a long time. So I had boiled chicken, and I had a hard boiled egg, and then I had I think it was just a muffin or something basic, you know. But, no, I don't eat all high protein. I do eat towards the high protein diet, but it allows me to be stable throughout the day. Otherwise, if you see me on some of my shows, I'm like, all of a sudden, there goes my blood sugar again. So protein on days I have a show or protein when I need to talk or I have to see people. Yeah, the same thing. So
well, I know
so
that people, diabetics often get overwhelmed when they're thinking of all the diet. They think it as diet restrictions, and it's going to be so much
mhm.
work. And I think the latest research suggests that we shouldn't be eating three squares. And back in the old days, people didn't, five small snack size
Yeah.
meals, and that can, for some of those snacks, can be as simple as cheese and crackers or an egg and some juice or something. So it's actually, I think, less work, but to prepare five small snacks throughout the day. Um,
Yeah.
and it's healthier
Yeah.
for all of us because then your sugar does stay even.
Yeah.
I know on
It's always good.
night shift employees, nurses, and first responders and police officers, we eat so much junk, and then maybe we even have extra sugared coffee to keep us going. But by the time we're off the shift, and sometimes even before, that sugar drop just because of that's just water in your mug, right?
Um, I could say yes, but yeah. Didn't have any coffee today, so I decided to have a little. I know. And yes, I did put a little sweetener in there and I used little honey in my coffee. But yeah, I just didn't eat much today. I ate this early this morning, but I'm so glad though with the night shift though. What do you grab when you're on the night shift? This seems to be a big problem with people that work throughout the night because a lot of the kitchens are closed in hospitals and wherever they work. So, what would you grab,
Well,
or is it always bringing
my
things?
husband, now deceased, he used to work 3 to 11, at a time when I didn't know him, at the hospital that I was working night shift, and after we
Mhm.
were married years later, he says, "What is it that what do you guys do on night shift? Because I see people coming in with grocery bags." And he says, "There's cake and there's soda and there's all kinds of things." That was before we knew.
Party, party. No, sorry.
And I said, "What do you think? Night shift sleeps all night?" "No, your nurses do not sleep all night in the hospital." But we do have to sometimes give ourselves a boost and, you know, in our defense, I guess we weren't as conscious of what we were eating. We just knew that it gave us that instant boost that we needed. And, I can tell you, I don't know if you're gonna touch on energy drinks at all, but, uh
Mm,
that is not the answer, but if you're gonna
no.
lean toward that, you need to have something that's more natural with lots of B vitamins in it. Nothing with the artificial
Mhm.
sweeteners or the high dose caffeine, things like that. Those will
Artificial
cause heart
colors.
attacks.
Yeah.
Um, and
They
all
actually
your
can be very
secrets of your
addictive.
coworkers at night, you don't necessarily wanna see them in an emergency situation pounding on your
Mhm.
chest. So, you can take
No.
steps to avoid things like that.
Yeah, I remember I had a call from someone. He was he's actually high up politically, and he calls me. He's worried about his son, and he said, uh, "I don't know. This is what his symptoms are." I said, "Oh, you better check. Saturday night, he's probably drinking Red Bull with whatever, you know. It's just an energy drink in general. All energy drinks, they have an effect. And when you add alcohol to it, your body gets confused and the signaling gets confused with the heart. Is it a sedative? Is it a, it's like excites my heart? What is it going to do here? And it does cause problems. So you got to be careful when you have energy drinks. They do have a place in the world. You're going to go run a marathon, you need an energy drink. Oh, good for you, as long as it's something that you and your doctor knows is fine for you. But, things need to be all in balance, I would say. So now
Well,
we
that
have,
comes towards reading labels, and I know if the label's too long or too small, I don't take the time to read the label until I'm having, like, a adverse effect of something I bought, and "Oh, what
Mhm.
was this?" But none of us have time in the grocery store, and many of us
Yeah,
actually have it delivered to your house, so the people that are shopping for you and delivering it, Instacart, things like that, they're not reading the labels for you. You're supposed to know
you
those
know?
labels before you order the project. But it's a big responsibility to take care of yourself in a healthy manner, but it certainly is worth it when you
Right.
think of.
So in this section, we discussed stable blood sugar. That was the first topic out of seven. We're going to give you seven topics today. Stable blood sugar equals stable thinking. That's the point we made here today. Clean proteins, healthy fats, whole foods. They all prevent brains up and down brain fog, emotional swings, and energy crashes. So stable thinking. That's what you want, and it's simple. These are in the next. We're going to take a commercial break though, but in the next section here, we will be talking about inflammation, and this is something that Nurse Peggy and I speak about very often, but we need to because this is important. So we'll be right back, and you'll be hearing about inflammation and the brain.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back. Today we're discussing clean food is a clear mind, the missing link to focus and energy. What you eat directly shapes your brain, your mood, and your mental clarity. You know, the mood part is really interesting there. But let's go on to step 2. This is step 2 that we want you to know about. Reducing inflammation means you'll have a clearer thought process. You know, in a hospital, they can do an MRI, they can do a CAT scan, and they can actually see inflammation. And if it's inflammation, you'll see a lot of white in the center of the brain, equal, like mirrored on each side. And it's not exact, but it does show up. And inflammation does also affect the brain, not just, oh, I hurt my finger, or oh, my back hurts today, or it affects your brain. If you have inflammation in your body, chances are you do have some inflammation in your brain. So that's something to think about. You can have mild, moderate, severe. So we want to try and do certain things in our diet to hinder the inflammation. You know, it could be in your intestines or whatever. But inflammation is not just physical, it is neurological. When you consume sugars, refined sugars, that is, artificial ingredients, and processed foods. And let's talk a minute by processed foods. What actually we mean by processed foods. We talked about the ingredients. If the ingredients are real long, walk away. Processed foods are when they take something and they grind it down and then they use it as a filler, or you're not getting, say, wheat. Let's say they grind the wheat down or cornstarch and then they use it as cornstarch in a stew or whatever. It's considered processed. It's not a whole food. You know, sometimes it's better to just have boiled chicken and steamed broccoli and a baked potato. Do you know what I'm saying? It's full, non-processed foods. That's brain food. That's what you should be eating a lot of. So look at what you eat during the day and see what is not processed and see what is processed. Always grab that unprocessed foods. So you activate a systematic inflammation process, including in the brain, by eating those processed foods. So and basically, I know we've all felt this before, slower thinking. This is what it causes, slower thinking when you eat processed foods and things of that nature. Difficulty focusing. I mean, you could be in a meeting and just like, what were we talking about? Then they ask you a question. Oh boy, there it goes. So you want to be able to think quickly. Memory lapses. What were we just talking about? Mental fatigue. I just can't keep up. I'm so tired. Maybe your body's not tired. Maybe it's just your mind that's tired. Maybe your mind is just so exhausted from trying to process and make sense of all these processed foods in your bloodstream. Actually, the inflammation disrupts the neural communication pathways. So when inflammation is there, less circulation, less oxygen can get to your brain cells to keep it going and feed it the nutrients it needs. So inflammation is always bad. We've heard it from me many times on my shows, and you've heard it from Peggy as well. When you remove the inflammatory triggers, the brain begins to process faster, communicate more clearly, and function efficiently. So we're gonna remember
I'd
an
like to just
inflame.
say
Go
something
ahead,
right
go
here,
right ahead.
Gloria. My favorite thing here, hydration. Um, no matter how well you eat, if you're not hydrating yourself well,
Yep.
sometimes mental fog could be as simple as just being dehydrated.
Right,
Um,
and that's actually one of our steps, that's step 4. So, absolutely, that she always reminds me hydration. So even though I'm having some coffee right now, which actually has protein, I put the coffee in my protein drink. So level it out. Um, Actually, I will be having some water when I'm finished. I'll drink a couple big glasses of water to because coffee can dehydrate you, and I want to rehydrate. So balance, everything in balance. If you want to have coffee, that's fine, but just keep it in balance. So, yes, hydration. That'll be step 4. I'll let you take that one. Let's look at step 3. All right. Step 2 is inflammation. Step 3 is healthy gut, healthy mind. Yep, that's exactly what I said. If your gut is healthy, what do we mean by guts? We mean by intestines, colon, stomach, anything in between, any process it goes through, past your pancreas, past your gallbladder. Your liver gets involved too a little bit, the gallbladder. So a healthy gut is what we need to consider. So the microbiome, very important. Your gut's not just for digestion, it's your second brain. If you have a bad gut scenario, it's going to affect your brain because you'll end up with more toxin. You could end up with more toxins in your brain area. And in fact, about 90% of serotonin is produced in the gut, not the brain. This is all referenced information, by the way. This is not from my brain. According to the references, which will be posted in the comments as soon as this program comes up on air as a rerun, you will have the list of references there. So yes, 90% of serotonin is actually produced in the gut. It means healthier gut equals better mood, better focus, and your emotional stability is increased. I mean, how many times would you want that? I mean, if you're going through a lot of emotional upset in the family or at work or whatever, just think you can help to get that zen back, that zen feeling in your mind. Begin in your
you know,
microbiome.
at our age, Gloria, we grew up in many of us homes with one bathroom, and the scenario of after dinner, Dad took the newspaper, and you were literally a blank out of luck if you had a problem. But in some ways, and I'm sure the men didn't really know that, but they were actually being very healthy, taking their time, making sure that everything came out. Typically, nurses, again, we're running like in and out real quick. We can't take. But I had a nature doctor one time say that if your daily poop is the length of from your hand to your elbow, that's your goal. You really want to get rid of that much every day. And I thought she was
Wow.
crazy. I started watching, okay, now and I wasn't
Yeah.
even old enough to be focused on that, how as we get older, they say that's all we worry about. But you do feel so much better if you're not sluggish, as some of the commercials say. And sometimes
Mhm.
you do need something to help you, Miralax or something. But other times, it's as simple again as the water, not getting
Yeah.
enough to push it through. I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, you're good. That's a great point. I think too, as you go from patient to patient, a lot of the problems can arise in our microbiome because I know you go through this. Every nurse does, and every doctor and everybody in this type of field. You hold it too long, and that can be a problem too with that whole microbiome. Bacteria increases, bad, unhealthy bacteria can increase even further. So we ought to kind of watch that. So when your gut is balanced, your mind becomes calm, your thoughts become organized. I should say more calm, more organized, and your emotions become more stable. So have you ever noticed your mood change after eating certain foods? Oh, just, that's something to really think about there. I know my mood changes after eating certain foods, and that's where my protein comes in. I have I eat a lot of protein in my diet because if I was a vegetarian for a while and I started, it just didn't agree with me. It's not saying anything against the diet. Didn't agree with me. My body needed the heme iron, my blood counts started to drop. So I was under a lot of stress too. So vegetarian diet basically is based on a lot of carbs, and in my personal body type, I needed more protein in the form of meat. So my mood changes when I eat meat. My blood sugar stabilizes, and that's what changes my mood. It equalizes, everything equalizes better. It's more, just slow up, slow down, slow up, rather than zigzagging up and down and up and down. So at least I know what does it for me. How about you, Peggy?
Well, I think everybody is different, and we all have, different hormone activity in our bodies that are influencing this. People that have gone through bariatric surgery, which there is a large population now over the years that has done that, there's going to be some modifications in what we're talking about. And it's most important to follow your medical provider first, not
Right.
just experiment, and if you're experimenting and you find something that you think is working, run it by the doctor because, I had a personal experience. They weren't taking their vitamins after that surgery because they thought they were eating healthy food, and
Hmm.
there was a negative outcome with that. So it's important that you look at the whole picture. That's why we're both holistic practitioners. We consider all aspects, and that's not always just acupuncture and, different, aromatherapy. It's actually, we look at the whole body as it participates in the whole life.
Right.
We're all connected to each other and we're all connected to all parts of ourselves.
Very so true. So true. So far we've discussed stable blood sugar, stabilizing your blood sugar with clean proteins, healthy fats, and whole foods. Now we've discussed number two, which is removing refined sugars, eliminating processed foods, and avoiding additives. So it supports a faster, more efficient brain signaling. So that'll help with brain fog too. Um, So next we're going to discuss healthy gut equals healthy mind. We're going to go more into detail about that. So that's the third section. Actually, did we do step three? Why is it I feel like we did step three? Yes, we did. So there we have the healthy gut, richer fiber foods, whole plant diversity, and microbiome support. Enhances the mood and focus. This really does work. Emotional sustainability, stability, and self-sustainability. So remember, you may want to consult with your medical practitioner, and it's self-sustainability. Choose the one that you think is correct. Could be a physician, could be a nurse practitioner, could be your chiropractor, could be a holistic anything. It's up to you. So keep that in mind. And let's see. So next we'll be talking about the simplest yet ignored factors in mental clarity. Guess what? Step 4, water. So
Mhm.
stay right there. We'll be right back.
Master of words, powerful player, What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Welcome back. You're watching Medical Intuitive Insights. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Warren. We have Nurse Peggy here with us as well, and we are discussing clean food, clear mind, the missing link to focus and energy. You know, Peggy, I just can't think of anybody who wouldn't need to hear some of this. I mean, who doesn't ever have a problem with focusing or an energy at some point during the week, or maybe on Friday morning you had a meeting, and it's like it's been a long week. So just a thought.
Well, one thought that just popped into my mind, seems like nature has a lot of the answers that we could learn from, animals. And I know for sure that if my 5-gallon water dish that's, there for the dogs, if it's running low, they will pick it up, knock it over, throw it at me, and say, "Hey, I need water." And then I
Can
think,
we
well,
throw
I
our
do
empty
too,
water
actually.
bottles?
Thanks for anyway.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
water is so important, though, not just, I mean, water can eliminate a lot of things like migraine issues.
Mm-hmm.
Many times, because of whatever chronic medical conditions that we've acquired over the years that are being treated by traditional medicine, many of those medications are based on achieving a therapeutic blood level. If you're not drinking enough water, those levels could become toxic. And people
Right.
don't realize, that certain medications you're on, you need to maintain, and all medicines, I believe, you would know this, the epidemiologist, they're processed through your liver and kidneys. And so you need to get it through. It gets transported when your blood is not real thick and clogged up, and water helps with that.
Right.
Uh,
And that is, when I was in pharmaceutical research, that was one of the main problems we had with adverse events, because the people were not drinking enough water. It seems to be very common. I mean, uh, if you have an antibiotic per se, it can affect your liver, either affects your liver or your kidneys more. So you gotta know what it affects, and then you need to drink sufficient enough water so that you don't end up with skin rashes or an adverse event. So it definitely comes in plays when it comes to pharmaceuticals and toxins in your blood. So, and actually, if you're dehydrated, brain cells shrink, and it reduces the brain's ability to process information because they've shrunk. It increases the risk of cognitive decline too over time, with your age. And age may not necessarily be the main factor. It may be dehydration of the brain cells. So you have inflammation in the brain that pushes so the blood can't flow in, but at the same time, you have can get cellular dehydration, and a brain can't function. The axons, the neurons cannot function correctly if there isn't enough moisture in the brain. So it can have those synaptic responses going back and forth. So something to really think
I
about.
think water is important to keep our memory going. They're kind of like the oil that, oil lubricates all the different cogs and parts, like putting oil in your car. You don't put oil, your car
Mhm.
burns out. If you're not getting enough hydration, you actually burn out in a
Right.
uh, medical sense and have a lot more common. One of the early signs of type 2 diabetes, sometimes people don't realize it, but they're constantly thirsty.
Yep.
And if you find yourself in an ICU with a 600 blood sugar and you're going to have an insulin drip for sure. But one of the things they do is like super hydrate you with IVs to help bring down the blood sugar so they don't need quite as much insulin. Water's more natural than making, if you're having borderline kidney issues, it could be just like sometimes your veterinarian may have hydrated your cat or dog towards their older part of their life because the kidneys are not quite functioning well enough. And something is a little bit of hydration every day can, prevent or extend their lives because it triggers the kidneys into working better. It doesn't work for everybody, but that's usually one of the first things that vets always look for. And,
Right.
but everything even water has its concerns and possible side effects. If you're in congestive heart failure, your doctor
Mm.
may tell you you can't have, but a liter of water a day. It's important that
Right.
you listen to that because the inflammation that's already around your heart is making your heart struggle to pump. You add more water to that when the heart's not pumping effectively, uh,
Hmm.
just going to make things worse. So,
Right. It's an
you
either
know,
or. You could have too much as well. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
Doctor
my
Google is excellent. They're using AI, talking about making AI clones of like a defective heart, and they can learn from their AI model and then apply that to the person. I think that's real promising research, but it's not something for the untrained to try on their own. Um,
right.
so there are many times the doctors don't tell us everything. They tell us what they need you to know to cooperate and to be compliant with medications that you probably really need. Um, and so, since we don't know, we're not reading the doctor's mind. We don't know how to interpret our tests and everything. It's important that you really do pay attention and ask questions.
Hmm.
Maybe that you have some symptoms you forgot to mention that may make the doctor change their mind. But hydration is the cheapest medicine. I
Right.
promote it all the time. It's healthier. I know that if I'm feeling sluggish, really tired on a night shift, a couple drinks of cold water can wake me up. Some people splash the cold water on their face. That helps too, short term, but drinking actually and getting your blood moving. Um,
Right.
and, sugar is, most cancers thrive on sugar. And many types of cancers are really just an abnormal inflammation process going on in your body. Um, so
Yeah.
and I've had people tell me, I never ate sweets until I got cancer. What's going on? And it's like your brain has a messenger that's saying, feed me. There's cancer here. We need to feed it. It's hungry.
Feed me more. Feed me.
So there is science behind all of this.
Hmm.
And, it's important to ask the questions. There's no stupid questions. Um, I think that
Right.
what we've learned over the years, the Eastern and Western medicine work very well together for many of our serious medication and medical issues that we face in life. Uh, and, we're part of that to show you that you have both views here, but they both work together. And,
Right.
and that's,
So if you are dehydrated, though, the imbalance of neurotransmitter function can lead to anxiety, palpitations, and irritability. But water is vital for the production of this balance for the neurotransmitters to regulate mood, attention, and mental clarity. There is something that I also want to mention here, and that is mineral balance. Sometimes people overdo it with the water, and we need to be careful with that. You don't sit there and chug 8 bottles of water in the morning and think that later on you can have a few more. It flushes out natural minerals too. So don't overdo it. Just listen to your body. If I was outside in the hot sun, or like I was this morning in a steam room at the gym, and just sweating. I had a lot of inflammation from the salt in my diet from Easter, so I needed a good sweat. It worked, but I will drink water to make sure I'm hydrated. I'm not going to over drink water. So that can be a big problem. Water does help maintain fluid environment for neurons too, to communicate effectively. So everything's in balance, but hydration means a lot. So now let's move on a little bit. We're talking memory decline, reduced concentration, slower processing speeds. Your brain is approximately 75% water. So when hydration drops, so does performance. To improve focus, memory, decision making, dehydration creates confusion. Hydration creates clarity. So let's move on to step 5. I know we are a little low on time for it, but let's go for it. Removing additives removes mental static. That's number 5. Step 5, remove additives in your food. Don't buy things that have a lot of additives. If it's a long label, don't buy it. There are actually some basic healthy additives, but when you start with chemicals, it's going to affect your brain. And I'm not going to get into details of which ones, but artificial ingredients are not neutral. They interfere with neurotransmitters, hormonal signaling, and brain communications. Common culprits are artificial colors, preservatives, and synthetic sweeteners. I have a whole show I want to do on synthetic sweeteners. There's some that are better than others, and some that are worse than others. So I used to do this one years ago, and perhaps I'll do it next week, or maybe I'll do a short on it. But all of those bad things, the preservatives, the synthetic sweeteners, and artificial colors, they contribute to hyperactivity, brain
Ask the
fog.
teachers the day after Halloween. I think there's
Yes, and
probably a
mood
high
swings.
fallout rate
Mhm.
for teachers that day because, it's not a pleasant day usually for most teachers.
Right.
Um,
There are
and
some good healthy
we
snacks,
were
though, that you
talking
can give
about
out.
processed foods, though, and I'm watching the clock. Why I wanted to bring this up real quick.
Sure.
We live in a world where we're rushing around. We need the convenience. And I've learned that I learned out of necessity because of my schedule when the kids were younger. But if I prepared a crock pot meal in the morning when I was feeding the kids breakfast, you come home at 5 o'clock, your dinner's already ready, and it's healthy because there's
Yeah.
no additives in it. That's how I make my dog food, in the crock. I make the week's worth of dog food on Sundays, and I do it in the crock pot. There's no additives because animals are affected by these additives also.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah. If my
Yeah.
dog has a behavior problem that's sudden out of the blue, I look to see if he ate anything that he shouldn't have eaten. Is there any evidence on the floor somewhere they got into something?
Yeah.
Uh, so
Yeah.
we can learn a lot watching. Again, I'm always happy to say watching the animals will teach us a lot about how we should act. It would be a beautiful world if we all acted like animals. That's a
You
personal
know,
opinion.
I guess I do need to be a little more upfront with that. But so when we remove these bad things that are in your diet, the brain quiets down, it settles down. It can actually be more natural the way your brain was meant to be. So they never had these things centuries ago. It was all natural, and your brain needs natural products. And brain quiets down because it's more content because it gets more of what it needs. The next thing it does is your focus sharpens. So if you cut out all these processed foods and coloring and preservatives, there are products out there with natural food coloring. Think about that, okay? Your focus will sharpen and thinking becomes more organized and clearer. It's amazing what it does. So, coming up next, we're going deeper into brain chemistry and how nutrients literally build your thoughts. So stay right there. We'll be right back.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Master of words, powerful player. What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life.
Welcome back to our show today. If you're enjoying this episode of Medical Intuitive Insights, please let me know what state you're watching it from. Remember to click on like, subscribe, and share it too to those in need that need to hear this information. Now, food is brain power. How many times have you heard that? Okay, clarity starts though in the kitchen. So step 6, let's go to step 6. More nutrients yields more brain fuel. So we're talking about nutritious foods, fatty fish, blueberries, dark leafy vegetables, eggs. By the way, Nurse Peggy and I were talking about acetylcholine. Eggs are high in acetylcholine. Also for acetylcholine, which helps with memory, is organ meats. And that's one of the biggies I eat, a lot of organ meats, liver, beef heart, kidney, organ meats. They are, to me, they're more of a scrap food. They can't even sell all of them. They end up throwing most of them away. So I actually can feel better by having my carnivorous diet by eating a lot of organ meats. So some of the other ways now of brain boosting foods, we also have walnuts. Looks like a brain, acts like a brain. No, looks like a brain, and it supports the brain nutrients. Turmeric, because if you get inflammation in your brain, you're going to have a difficult time focusing and thinking and figuring things out. Broccoli, another nutrient-rich brain food. So you have some nutrient-rich brain food there, and this is what you need to buy, things like that. So we were mentioning, before I move on to step 6, so the organ acetylcholine-rich meats, organ meat. Like I said, I already gave those. Fish, I like organ meat the best. Caviar, I love caviar, but it's too expensive for me. Beef, but hey, organ meats have the highest level of meat products. So that's, to me, is a food that I don't feel they're killing the animal for. It's more of a remnant. So I'm happier eating that, and it's more nutritious, keeps my red blood cells up. Dairy foods are high in acetylcholine. Whole eggs, definitely. Don't forget eggs. Pickle them if you don't like them. Make egg salad if you want, but I'm big on pickling them. I think the vinegar, it's a healthy, keeps the microbiome in my digestive system all intact. It helps with the prebiotic scenario. So shiitake mushrooms are also something that is excellent, filled with acetylcholine. So now let's go on to step 6. 6 out of 7, more nutrients equals more brain power in general. It's fantastic. So remember, you stay away from unprocessed foods and don't have ultra processed foods. A lot of people just go to unprocessed foods. You will find that you will get more nutrition from those foods. Your body knows what it's doing. Your brain runs on nutrients, not calories. Keep that in mind. Nutrients, nutrient-dense foods. Whole foods provide amino acids, which actually are the neurotransmitters, the amino acids. Healthy fats, good for the brain structure. Vitamins, minerals, help with signaling. Without these, your brain cannot produce dopamine. You need dopamine for motivation. And without those foods, you can't have acetylcholine for memory. So keep that in mind. So no nutrients means no neurotransmitters, no clarity. So step 7, clean eating supports energetic field. I used to be able to make myself glow. Probably still can, but because my energetic field was very powerful. I ate only whole foods back then. And I noticed the energy was phenomenal every day from morning till night. So your brain runs on nutrients, whole foods only. And that means specifically amino acids, healthy fats for brain structure. Remember, your brain is made of fats. Dr. Broderick, the neuroscientist, even mentioned that on our show. Vitamins and minerals help with signaling. It's kind of like battery acid for that, the signaling transmitters. You need vitamins and minerals to do this. That's why I say don't get overhydrated, because you can flush out some of those necessary minerals in your brain. Without these, though, your brain cannot produce dopamine and acetylcholine. So we're here now to clean foods, clean eating, supports energetic field, and beyond the physical into the energetic. Clean foods bring you closer to nature, lowering chemical disruption, higher in natural frequency. And what does that support? Intuition, emotional steadiness, mental clarity. This is where science meets awareness. What you consume influences how you perceive everything. Clean food is not just nutrition. It's a protocol for mental clarity, emotional stability, cognitive performance, and energetic alignment. Final call to action, though. Let me say, if this message resonates with you, start simple. 1 clean meal a day, 1 processed food removed each day, and 1 intentional change, because clarity begins with a single decision, a single action. And you can do this. Everyone can do this to a certain extent. Sometimes the unprocessed foods are actually less expensive than the processed foods. So we have tons of references. They'll be placed at the end of the program. Thank you, Peggy, for being here with us today. I so appreciate you. I just appreciate you.
This is where we got the phrase, you are what you eat. And
yes,
if you don't liking what you look in the mirror, they look at what you're eating.
Right.
But it's not that complicated, because once you increase the mindfulness and mindful eating even, and the awareness, it just falls into place. You won't even notice those things that aren't good for you. You'll always be noticing the good things, and you'll get better habits.
Right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us. There for the grace of God go I, and God bless each and every one of you. And may you eat more nutritious foods than you can ever eat in your whole lifetime. Just start eating nutritious foods, forget all the processed foods, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
This has been Medical Intuitive Insights with host Dr. Gloria Warren. Tune in each week as Gloria shares over 40 years of experience and yearns to provide knowledge derived from intuition and research. Wednesdays, 2 p.m. Eastern.